Snow fell like silence that night. Chicago's skyline shimmered under the pale glow of streetlights, each flake catching the city's breath. Somewhere in that frozen world, a woman walked alone, boots sinking into white streets, her dark coat brushing against the wind. Her name was Nora Steele, former military, now private security. She'd seen war, chaos, betrayal, and learned one thing: emotions get you killed. Tonight, she wasn't here to feel. She was here for a job. Call had come through 3 nights ago. Discreet, expensive, dangerous. A private contract with no name attached. Only an address. Only one rule: protect the client at all costs. Nora didn't ask questions. She never did. But something about this one felt different, heavier. As she stood outside the tall black gates of a mansion overlooking frozen Lake Michigan, the wind cut through her gloves. The guards at the entrance gave her the kind of look trained men give when they're hiding fear. Inside, the air was warm. Too warm. And at the far end of the marble hallway, he was waiting. Lorenzo DeLuca. The name alone could silence half of Chicago. He wasn't what she expected. Not loud, not cruel. He sat behind a desk of dark mahogany, suit perfect, eyes sharper than glass. When he looked up, it felt like he'd already read her file, her history, her heartbeat. "You're the new bodyguard," he said, voice low, measured. "You came highly recommended. Former Army, precision shooter, strategic, no emotional ties." He paused, almost amused. "Let's hope that last part stays true." Nora didn't flinch. "I follow orders, Mr. DeLuca. That's all that matters." He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Good. Then follow this one closely. Protect me from everyone, even myself." There was something strange in his tone, a flicker of honesty beneath arrogance, and for a split second, Nora wondered what kind of man needed protection from himself. That night, she toured the mansion, mapped every hallway, every blind spot, every shadow. She moved like a ghost, calculating exits, memorizing patterns. The men under Lorenzo's command whispered when she passed. A woman in this job, in his world, was unheard of, but Nora didn't care. Respect was earned, not given. Later, on the balcony, she caught him watching her. He stood beside her in silence, snow landing on his dark hair. "You don't talk much," he said finally. "Talking wastes time," she replied. He laughed softly. "And here I thought soldiers only followed orders. I'm not a soldier anymore." "No," he said quietly. "Now you're protecting the devil." Nora turned to meet his eyes and saw something unexpected there. Not cruelty, not danger, but exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying too many sins for too long. Hours later, while reviewing security footage, Nora noticed something that made her blood run cold. A flicker of movement on the perimeter cameras. Someone was already watching the house. Not the police, not the press, someone trained. Someone who knew exactly where to look. She reached for her comm. "DeLuca, we've got company," Static answered. Then a gunshot. The screen went black, and just like that, Nora's first night on the job turned into a war she didn't sign up for. Snow still fell over Chicago like an endless confession, but inside the DeLuca mansion, the silence had turned into something sharper. Gunfire, one shot, then nothing. Nora's instincts took over. She moved fast, down the hallway, weapon drawn, heartbeat steady. Her boots echoed off marble as she pushed through the heavy doors that led to Lorenzo's office, and there he was, standing in front of shattered glass, gun still smoking in his hand. Outside the broken window, only darkness. For a moment, she just stared. The wind cut through the open frame, snow drifting in like white ghosts. He wasn't hurt, but there was blood on his sleeve. "Are you hit?" she asked. He shook his head once. "Not mine." On the floor lay a man, face down, unrecognizable, his weapon still clutched tight. Nora lowered her gun, but not her guard. "You killed him." "He came to kill me," Lorenzo said quietly. "You were fast, but not fast enough." That sting landed deeper than she expected. She wasn't used to failing, not even once. "I'll lock down the property," she said, but before she could move, he stopped her. "No, you'll stay here." His tone was cold, commanding, but underneath it was something else. Fear, not for himself, for her. The next morning, the mansion was crawling with his men. They spoke in low voices, cleaning up the mess before sunrise. Nora watched as the body disappeared into the snow. No police, no questions, just silence. This was how the DeLuca empire worked. Quiet, clean, absolute. But something about it twisted her stomach. She had spent her life protecting people from violence. Now, she was protecting violence itself. Later, when she finally confronted him, he was sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames like they were whispering secrets only he could hear. "You could have called the cops," she said. He didn't even look up. "And tell them what? That someone tried to kill me?" They'd ask who sent him. I'd have to tell them my enemies' names, and my friends too. "That's not justice, Lorenzo. That's fear." He turned then, eyes dark and unreadable. "No, Nora, that's survival." For a long second, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked. Snow fell against the windows, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the name. Not the monster, the human, tired, lonely, and dangerously honest. The next days blurred together. Nora tightened security, rechecked every route, every schedule. She trained his guards herself, earning their respect the hard way, with skill, not fear. But every time she turned a corner, she felt his presence, watching, measuring, maybe even admiring. One evening, she caught him on the balcony again, coat draped over his shoulders, snow gathering at his feet. "You shouldn't be out here without protection," she said. "That's what you're for, isn't it?" He smirked. "Not when you ignore my orders." He raised a brow. "You give me orders now? When it comes to keeping you alive?" "Yes," he smiled, this time softer. "Then maybe I hired the wrong bodyguard. You don't protect people, Nora. You command them." For a brief, dangerous second, their eyes met, and she hated how her heart skipped. Later that night, she reviewed the footage again, frame by frame, and that's when she noticed it. The attacker who broke in wasn't alone. There was another figure in the snow, waiting near the tree line, watching, and when the lens caught his face for a single, flickering second, Nora froze. She knew that face. Someone from her past. Someone who was supposed to be dead. Snow fell heavier that night, blanketing Chicago in white silence. But inside Nora's chest, a storm had already started. She couldn't stop staring at the paused screen, the blurred frame of that face. The security feed flickered, distorting, but not enough to erase the truth. She knew him. She'd trained with him. Ethan Ward, her former commanding officer, and the man she had watched die 3 years ago in Afghanistan. Her breath caught. The ghost she buried had come back to life, and they were standing outside the DeLuca mansion. Nora replayed the footage again and again, hoping she was wrong. But Ethan's profile, that sharp jawline, the way he moved, it was him. It had to be. She locked the screen, rubbed her eyes, and steadied her breathing. No emotion, no panic. Focus, Steele. Down the hall, the fire still burned in Lorenzo's office. The house was quiet, but she knew he hadn't slept. Men like him didn't. They carried insomnia like a second skin. When she entered, he was standing near the window, staring out at the endless snow. His jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, and there was that faint scar near his wrist, an old wound, not healed properly. "You should rest," she said quietly. He turned. "So should you." Nora hesitated. Her mind was racing, but she couldn't tell him. Not yet. If Ethan was really alive, this wasn't just a threat to Lorenzo. It was a message to her. "I checked the perimeter," she said instead. "No movement. Whoever attacked you last night won't try again soon." He studied her. His gaze was too perceptive, too dangerous. "You're lying," he said simply. She froze. "What?" "Your voice gets lower when you lie. I've been listening." She exhaled slowly, forcing control back into her tone. "Then stop listening." He smirked faintly. "Can't. Not when you're the only one in this house who doesn't flinch around me." For a moment, the world shrank. Just them, the snow, the silence. There was something magnetic about him. Not just his power, but his restraint. The kind of man who could destroy everything with one word, and yet chose to stay quiet. "You don't scare me," Nora said. "Good," Lorenzo murmured. "Because I don't need another guard who fears me. I need one who understands me." She almost said, "I don't want to understand you." But the truth hung there, heavy. Part of her already did. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell the faint trace of whiskey and winter on him. "You keep people alive, Nora," he said softly. "But who keeps you alive?" Her throat tightened. There was no answer for that. A sound broke the silence. A faint beep from her comms. Static, then a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Nora, it's been a while." She froze. Every instinct went on high alert. Lorenzo watched her face change, saw the shift from calm to chaos. "Who is that?" he asked. She didn't answer. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Still protecting the wrong people, soldier?" Nora ripped the earpiece out and crushed it in her hand. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Ethan, he was alive, and close. Lorenzo stepped forward, voice sharp. "Tell me what's going on." She wanted to, but saying his name out loud would make it real. "It's nothing," she lied. "Don't lie to me." She met his gaze, defiant, trembling, trapped between her past and the man she was sworn to protect. "This isn't about you, Lorenzo," she said quietly. "It's about me." His expression hardened, but his voice lowered, almost gentle. "Then whoever it is, they just made it about me." Outside, snow whipped against the windows. Somewhere beyond the gates, headlights flickered in the dark. One car, idling, waiting. Nora knew what was coming. The war she'd tried to leave behind had just found her again, and this time, it was coming for both of them. Morning came, but the sun never broke through the Chicago snow. The DeLuca mansion sat in silence, blanketed in white, too still, too calm. Inside, Nora hadn't slept. She stood by the window, coffee gone cold in her hand, her reflection staring back at her like a stranger. She could still hear that voice from last night echoing in her mind. "Still protecting the wrong people, soldier?" It wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder. Her past wasn't dead, it had just been waiting. Lorenzo entered the room quietly, but she felt him before she saw him, that steady, confident presence, the kind that filled every inch of air. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. Black turtleneck, dark coat. Less Mafia boss, more man made of winter itself. "You haven't slept," he said. "Neither of you." He glanced at the snow. "Sleep doesn't survive in my world." Nora turned from the window. Your world has enemies with military training. That got his attention. He looked at her, sharp, calculating. So you do know who they are? She hesitated. Her instincts screamed don't trust him, but her heart, the one thing she thought she'd buried, whispered he deserves to know. I recognized one of them, she admitted, an old associate. From before all this, before you became my bodyguard, before I stopped believing in loyalty. Lorenzo's expression softened, but only for a moment. You think he's coming for me? No, she said quietly. He's coming for me. You're just collateral. That earned a low laugh. Not mocking, but weary. In my life, I've been hunted for money, power, revenge. Never because of someone else's past. He stepped closer. Tell me who he is. His name doesn't matter, she said, her voice breaking slightly. He died years ago. Or at least he was supposed to. For a moment neither spoke, only the faint sound of snow hitting glass. Lorenzo reached into his pocket and handed her something, a small silver coin, engraved with the DeLuca crest. Keep this, he said. Every man I trust carries one. It means protection. It means you're mine to defend. She stared at it, small, cold, heavy in her palm. I don't belong to anyone, Lorenzo. No, he said softly. But I take care of the people who bleed for me. That line hit harder than she expected. She wanted to argue, to remind him that she was here for a paycheck, not a promise. But deep down, something inside her had already started to crack. By evening, the snowstorm had grown worse. The guards struggled to see beyond the gates. Nora checked every camera feed twice, but the static interference kept coming back. Short, precise bursts. Military precision. Ethan was toying with her. She pulled her weapon from its holster, checked the chamber. Her movements were calm, but her pulse wasn't. When Lorenzo found her in the armory, she was already in combat gear. You're preparing for a fight, he said. No, she replied. I'm preparing for a ghost. He stepped closer, searching her eyes. You really think I'd let you go into this alone? This isn't your battle. You're under my protection now, Nora. And if someone wants to hurt you, they're already at war with me. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. No man had ever said words like that to her. Not as a threat, not as pity, but as a vow. She tried to mask it with sarcasm. You'd kill a man you've never met. For me, I've killed for less. For a heartbeat, she forgot how to breathe. The air between them shifted, the walls, the snow, the silence. Everything seemed to dissolve until there was only his gaze, dark and steady. You don't even know who I am, she whispered. Then tell me, he said, before someone else does. But she couldn't, not yet. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't about loyalty or love or betrayal. It was about what she'd done and who she'd lost. Outside, headlights cut through the storm again, 2 black SUVs stopping just beyond the gates. Lorenzo's men reached for their weapons. Nora's comm crackled with interference. Then a voice, cold, calm, familiar. Time's up, Steele. Her blood ran cold. He was here, and this time, he wasn't coming for a warning. Snow swallowed the city that night. The storm was so heavy it blurred the world into white noise, and for a few fragile seconds it almost looked peaceful. But inside the DeLuca estate, peace had already died. The gates were breached. Engines roared. Men moved through the snow like shadows with rifles. Nora was already in motion before the alarm sounded. Her mind shifted into combat rhythm. Heart steady, steps silent, instincts sharper than fear. She'd been trained for this. She just never thought she'd be doing it here. Down in the control room, the security feeds blinked red, cameras cutting out one by one. She grabbed her earpiece. Front perimeter compromised. 6 hostiles. He's here. Lorenzo's voice came through, calm but low. You sure? He called me Lorenzo. He wants me alive, which means you're the leverage. Silence on the line. Then, noted, stay low. I'm coming to you. She wanted to argue, to tell him to stay hidden, but there was no time. A gunshot cracked from the west wing. Another answered from the hall. The house that once smelled of expensive whiskey and firewood now smelled like gunpowder. She ducked behind a marble column, firing clean and fast. One down, then another. These weren't street thugs. They moved like soldiers. Like her. A memory hit her mid-reload. Sand, sunlight, explosions, and Ethan's voice barking orders over radio static. Never hesitate, Steele. Hesitation gets people killed. Her pulse stuttered. Not now. Focus. She took cover behind the staircase. The next man came around the corner. Too slow. She fired once. He dropped. A hand grabbed her from behind, gloved, strong, slammed her into the wall. She twisted, elbowed, turned the weapon, fired point blank. The body fell heavy at her feet. She exhaled, shaking. The old training never left her. Neither did the guilt. Then came his voice. Low, calm, unmistakable, still efficient, Ethan said, stepping out from the shadows. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was real, alive, breathing, and smiling like time hadn't changed a thing. Same green eyes, same scar above his eyebrow. You should have stayed dead, she said. You should have stayed out of my way. He held his weapon loose in his hand, like it was just an accessory. You working for him now? Ethan nodded toward the hallway. the great Lorenzo DeLuca. Chicago's untouchable king. He's not what you think. He's exactly what I think. And you, he smiled bitterly. You've changed sides again, haven't you? Always did have a thing for lost causes. Nora raised her weapon. You don't know anything about him. I know enough. I know he's the reason you're still breathing, and that makes him a liability. You want him dead? You'll have to go through me. That's the plan. The shot rang out, but it wasn't his. It came from behind Ethan, from the upper balcony. Lorenzo. The bullet grazed Ethan's arm, forcing him to drop behind cover. Lorenzo jumped down the stairs, landing hard, gun aimed steady. You have 3 seconds to disappear, he said. Ethan laughed. You really think this ends with me running? The next exchange was chaos. Gunfire tearing through glass and stone. Nora grabbed Lorenzo, dragging him behind the railing. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, he snapped back. For a moment, their eyes met. Anger, fear, and something unspoken between them. He wasn't just her boss anymore. He was hers to protect. The fight moved fast. Flashes of light, shouts, then silence. When the smoke cleared, Ethan was gone. Just like that, only his voice echoed faintly through the comms. Round 1, Steele. Next time, I take what's mine. When it was over, Lorenzo leaned against the wall, bleeding slightly from a cut across his temple. You're hurt, Nora said. I've been worse. She pressed a cloth against the wound. He didn't flinch. He just watched her, really watched her. You knew him, he said finally. The man who came here tonight, you knew him before I ever did. She swallowed hard. Yes, and you didn't tell me. Because it's complicated. Complicated gets people killed, Nora. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up. I thought he was dead. I thought I'd buried him, along with everything I used to be. Lorenzo's voice softened. You can't bury the past. You just wait for it to come digging for you. Her throat tightened. He was my commander, my fiancé. That word hung between them like a gunshot. For the first time since they met, Lorenzo DeLuca had no words. The silence was heavier than snow. The night stretched endlessly over Chicago, a cold blanket of white swallowing the city whole. Inside the mansion, the fire burned low, crackling softly against the heavy silence that followed her confession. Nora stood near the hearth, shadows moving across her face, her hands still trembling slightly from the battle. Across from her, Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of whiskey, one for her, one untouched in his hand. Neither spoke for a long time. Fiancé, he said finally, his tone careful. That's not a word I hear often in this house. Nora's eyes stayed on the flames. It was a long time ago, and now he's trying to kill you? Now he's trying to finish what the world started. Her voice cracked, quiet but sharp. Ethan was a soldier who believed in purpose. When the war ended, he didn't know how to live without one. I left the military. He didn't. He joined a private syndicate, mercenaries for hire. I told him I couldn't follow that path. Lorenzo sipped his drink, his gaze never leaving her. So he made you the enemy. He made me the traitor. Her words hung in the air, raw and fragile. He took a slow breath, setting the glass down. You realize what this means, don't you? That he's not going to stop. No, Lorenzo said softly. It means you've just become my weakness. Her heart faltered. I don't want to be anyone's weakness. Neither did I. He looked away then, into the snow outside, a man carrying too much truth for his own comfort. Hours passed. The storm eased, but the tension between them didn't. The mansion was being repaired. Shattered glass replaced. Bullet holes patched, but the real damage wasn't in the walls. Nora couldn't shake the sound of Ethan's voice in her ear. That taunting calm, the certainty that he wasn't done. Every instinct screamed she should leave, protect him by distance. But she couldn't walk away, not now. When she finally found Lorenzo again, he was in the study, backlit by the dim glow of a desk lamp, reading through reports. His expression was stone, but his eyes betrayed something quieter, worry. Your men are spread too thin, she said. He'll find a way in again. I'm not afraid of him. You should be. He looked up at her, that same measured stare, but this time, there was no judgment in it. You think fear keeps people safe, Nora? It doesn't. Fear makes them predictable. Then what keeps you safe? Control. And what happens when you lose it? A faint smile touched his lips. I hire someone like you. The air shifted between them again. That pull, that impossible line they both refused to cross but kept standing too close to. You shouldn't have to protect me from your past, Lorenzo said finally. If this man wants a war, he'll get one. But you need to decide where you stand. You think I haven't? I think you're still deciding whether I'm worth saving. Her breath caught, because he wasn't wrong. Later that night, she walked the corridors alone. The house was quiet, the snow outside glowing blue under the moonlight. She stopped by the balcony, the same one where they first talked. The city stretched below her, distant and cold. Lorenzo joined her silently. For a moment, neither spoke. You know, he said softly, the first time I saw you, I thought you'd last a week. And now? No, I don't know how to run this house without you. She turned toward him, caught off guard. That's dangerous talk, Lorenzo. Everything about you is dangerous. The words lingered, breath turning to mist in the winter air. For the first time, she saw the man, not the boss. Someone tired of pretending he didn't care. You should get some sleep, she said, breaking the silence. Only if you stay where I can see you. He smiled faintly, and for a moment, just one, the world outside didn't exist. 2 broken souls, bound by danger, standing in the quiet glow of falling snow. But peace never lasts long in Lorenzo De Luca's world. Her comm buzzed again, one short burst, encrypted. She frowned, opened the channel, no voice, just a single image. Ethan, standing outside the mansion gates, holding the same silver coin Lorenzo had given her, a message, a warning, and a promise. Round 2, his voice whispered through the static. You can't protect him forever. Nora's pulse went cold. The coin glinted in her palm, the symbol of loyalty, now turned into a threat. And for the first time since taking the job, Nora Steele wasn't sure who would survive the next night. Snow kept falling, soft and soundless, over Chicago's sleeping streets. But inside the De Luca estate, silence had turned into a warning. Nora moved through the corridor like a shadow, her gun already drawn. Lorenzo followed close behind, his expression unreadable, the faint click of his shoes echoing on the marble floor. Security grid's been cut, she whispered, scanning the hall. External cameras are offline. He's inside. How many? Lorenzo asked. Doesn't matter, Nora said. He wouldn't come alone. She caught a flicker of movement through the snow-glazed window, figures slipping through the dark. Disciplined, deliberate. Mercenaries, trained, professional. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was a message. We moved to the south wing, she said, turning to him. There's a panic route under the wine cellar. It'll get us out unseen. Running isn't my style. This isn't running, Nora said tightly. It's surviving, and right now that's my job, to keep you breathing. He hesitated, then nodded once. Lead the way. They moved fast, cutting through the empty halls. Lights flickered, power lines strained, and somewhere in the distance, a gunshot cracked. The sound tore through the mansion's calm like lightning. Lorenzo's men were already engaging. The echo of suppressed fire filled the air, but the rhythm of it told Nora what she didn't want to admit. They were losing. She stopped near the stairwell, pressing a hand against the wall. He's not just here to kill you, she murmured. He's here to take me apart, piece by piece. Then he'll have to get through me first, Lorenzo said, voice quiet but hard. That's not how this works, she said, eyes meeting his. You die, I fail. You live, I still lose. Something flickered in his expression. Guilt? Or something deeper? You're not going to lose, he said. Not tonight. They reached the cellar, the door disguised behind racks of vintage bottles. Nora entered a code, hidden, untraceable, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. A narrow stairway led into darkness. They descended, one after the other, the cold air thick with tension and dust. Snowmelt dripped through cracks in the ceiling. Somewhere above, footsteps echoed faintly. Lorenzo broke the silence. You know he won't stop until he breaks you. He already did once. And yet, you're still standing. Nora looked back at him, her face illuminated by the small light in her hand. Because I stopped waiting for someone to save me. He smiled faintly. You've got more strength than half the men I've ever hired. Don't romanticize it, she said quietly. Strength's just what's left when everything else is gone. But she couldn't ignore the warmth in his voice, the way it steadied her in the middle of chaos. They reached the end of the tunnel, an exit that opened into the forest behind the mansion. Snow blanketed everything in sight, untouched and eerily calm. Lorenzo stepped out first, scanning the horizon. You planned this route well. I planned for every worst-case scenario, she said. And what's the worst one now? She looked at him, the wind lifting her hair slightly. That I can't do my job anymore, because I care too much. The words hung there, fragile, dangerous. Lorenzo's gaze softened, the usual steel in his voice replaced by something else. Then maybe it's not just your job anymore. Before she could answer, a sharp crack tore through the air, a rifle shot. She spun, tackled him to the ground. The bullet shattered the tree behind them. Sniper, she hissed. They rolled behind a snow-covered boulder, breath coming fast. Lorenzo's hand gripped hers instinctively. You hit? No. Then tell me what to do. It was the first time she'd heard him say that. Tell me what to do. The control he always wore like armor was gone, replaced by trust. Nora peeked over the rock, scanned the ridge. 2 heat signatures. 1 sniper, 1 spotter. Ethan's style, surgical, merciless. She took a deep breath, exhaled slow and aimed. 2 shots. Clean, precise, silence. The echo faded into the snow. Lorenzo turned toward her, eyes filled with something fierce and unspoken. You just saved my life again. Don't make it a habit, she whispered, adrenaline still shaking her hands. He reached out, brushed the snow from her cheek. You can't keep doing this alone, Nora. I was never meant to protect someone like you, she said softly. Men like you burn the world to stay warm. Then stay close, he said, voice low, and I'll keep you from freezing. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. No gunfire, no fear, just the sound of snow falling between them. Then her radio crackled. Ethan's voice. You missed me, Nora. Her blood ran cold. I let you live tonight, Ethan said, because the real game starts tomorrow. And this time, he dies in your arms. The line went dead. Lorenzo met her eyes, the realization hitting both at once. This wasn't over. Ethan wasn't hunting them. He was leading them somewhere, and Nora knew. The next move would cost them something they couldn't get back. The city vanished behind them, swallowed by the white quiet of winter. For the first time in weeks, there were no gunshots, no engines, no shadows following their car. Only the hum of tires against frozen asphalt, and the rhythm of two people running from ghosts. Nora drove in silence, her fingers tight around the steering wheel. Lorenzo sat beside her, his usual calm replaced by something quieter. Reflection, maybe. Or exhaustion. "You sure this place exists?" he asked finally. "It's off every map," she said. "Old safe house from my military days. No one should know about it. Including me? Especially you." He smiled faintly at that. "You trust me that little?" "I trust you enough to keep you alive," she said. "That's as far as it goes." The road curved into the forest, winding higher into the mountains. Snow fell heavier now, thick flakes clinging to the windshield, blurring the world into shades of gray and white. When they finally reached the cabin, it looked almost forgotten. Wood dark with age, roof heavy with snow, smoke long gone from the chimney. "Charming," Lorenzo muttered. "You bring all your clients here? Only the ones people want dead." She stepped out first, scanning the perimeter, then gave a quick nod. "Safe, but for now." Inside, the air was cold but still. Nora moved with purpose, checking windows, lighting the old stove, setting the generator to hum softly in the back room. Lorenzo watched her quietly, jacket slung over his shoulder. "You do this often?" he asked. "Hide? Disappear." She looked at him then, really looked, the firelight flickering in her eyes. "I learned early on, sometimes survival means vanishing before anyone notices you were ever there." He didn't answer, just nodded, as if he understood all too well. By nightfall, the cabin felt almost alive again, the fire burning, snow drifting past the windows, shadows dancing across the wooden walls. They ate in silence. He tried to keep things normal, but normal didn't exist for either of them anymore. "You know," he said, setting down his glass, "when I hired you, I thought you'd last a month before running. And now? Now I think I'm the one who'd run first." She gave a small, involuntary smile. "Not really your style. You'd be surprised. Everyone runs from something, even mafia bosses, especially them." The air shifted, softer, heavier. For the first time, she saw the cracks behind the legend, the weight in his shoulders, the shadows in his voice. "What about you?" he asked. "What are you running from?" "Memories," she said quietly. "Some I can't forget. Some I'm afraid I might." He leaned back, studying her like he was memorizing a language he wasn't supposed to speak. "You don't let anyone close, do you?" "Close gets people killed. And yet here we are." The fire snapped softly. Neither moved. The silence between them said everything words couldn't. Later, Nora stood by the window, watching snow gather on the sill. Her reflection stared back, pale, tired, unsure. Behind her, Lorenzo moved quietly, setting a blanket on the couch where he'd decided to sleep. "You take the bed," he said. "I've slept in worse places." "I'm not arguing," he said, smiling faintly. "You always win anyway." "Not always." He stopped, turned toward her. Something in her tone caught him, that edge of sadness buried under strength. "What did you lose, Nora?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "Then, my sense of peace. A long time ago." He took a slow breath, stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing to heartbeats. "Maybe you'll find it again," he said. "Maybe here." Her lips parted, but no sound came. The warmth of his presence, the glow of the fire, the snow whispering against the glass. It all felt like a trap made of tenderness, and she didn't know whether to run from it or fall into it. "Lorenzo," she murmured. "This, whatever this is, it can't happen." "Why not?" "Because if it does, I stop being your protection." He looked at her for a long, quiet moment. "Maybe I never needed protection from the world," he said softly. "Maybe I needed protection from myself." Her heartbeat stumbled. The words hit harder than any bullet ever could. Hours later, she thought he was asleep. But when she checked the door locks one last time, his voice came from the dark. "Nora." "Yeah?" The blood drained from her face. In one motion, she killed the light and drew her gun. Outside, faintly, the snow moved. One set of prints circling the cabin, then two, then three. A voice whispered through the night, carried by the wind. "You can run, Nora, but you can't hide forever, Ethan." Her eyes met Lorenzo's in the dark. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. They both knew. This wasn't a standoff anymore. It was a countdown. The storm had thickened overnight. Snow swirled around the cabin like a living thing. Beautiful, silent, and cruel. But beneath that silence, something darker stirred. Nora's instincts screamed before the first sound reached her ears. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching through snow just beyond the tree line. She motioned to Lorenzo with 2 fingers. "Stay low." The next second, glass shattered. A flash grenade rolled across the floor. Light and sound erupted. "Down!" she shouted, tackling Lorenzo behind the couch. The world went white. Ears ringing. Heat, motion, chaos. When the noise cleared, gunfire followed. Sharp, precise, professional. They were surrounded. Nora moved like muscle memory. Low, fast, precise. Her rifle barked twice. 2 bodies dropped outside the window. She grabbed Lorenzo's arm and pulled him toward the cellar. "We need cover," she yelled. "I'm not hiding again," he snapped back, chambering his pistol. "This isn't hiding, it's fighting smart." Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, defiance meeting command. And then they moved together, a perfect rhythm forged by chaos. Every corner they passed was a memory of warmth now burned away by survival. The crackling fireplace, the untouched glasses on the table, the promise of safety, gone. They reached the back door. Nora kicked it open, snow blasting inward. They stepped into the storm, cold slicing like glass against their skin. She could barely see 10 feet ahead. Shadows moved through the white. 3, maybe 4 men. Ethan's voice drifted faintly through the wind, taunting. "Still protecting him, Nora? You never did learn when to walk away." Her breath hitched. Lorenzo froze. That voice, calm, intimate, venom wrapped in nostalgia. "He's close," she whispered. "Then we end this," Lorenzo said. He moved a step forward. She grabbed his wrist. "No, he wants you visible. And what does he want from you?" She looked at him. Regret. Before she could move again, a bullet slammed into the wood beside them, splinters exploding across her cheek. She fired back, dropped another man. "They're flanking," she shouted. Not for long. Lorenzo moved to the other side, covering her, his aim deadly, precise. He fought like he lived, with control, calculation, and no fear of death. But this wasn't about control anymore. It was about her. When the last of the gunfire faded, she caught the movement too late. A shadow behind Lorenzo, raising a rifle. Her scream tore through the snow. "Lorenzo!" She didn't think, just moved. One shot. The man fell, but so did she. Her leg buckled, blood seeping into the snow. She hit the ground hard, biting back a cry. Lorenzo was there in seconds, dropping beside her. "Nora, no, stay with me. It's just a graze," she breathed, teeth clenched. "I've had worse." He pressed his hand over the wound anyway, snow melting under the heat of their skin. His voice broke, barely above a whisper. "You could have let me take the hit. You're the job," she said, trying to smile. "Can't fail the job." "You think that's all this is now?" he said. She looked up at him, eyes glistening in the dim light of the storm. "It has to be. Then why does it hurt like this?" The silence that followed said everything. He cupped her face with a trembling hand. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. "Lorenzo, you saved my life more times than I can count," he said softly. "Let me save yours now. You can't. Try me." And then, before logic could speak, before duty could interrupt, he kissed her, gentle, desperate, real. The world fell away. The snow, the pain, the danger, gone. For one stolen moment, there was nothing but warmth. When he pulled back, his voice was barely a whisper. "You break every rule, Nora Steele. You make it too easy to forget them." The calm didn't last. A shadow moved again in the distance, taller, slower, deliberate. No mask this time. No team, just one man, Ethan. He stepped into the clearing, rifle slung low, eyes fixed on them. Snow fell between them like falling ash. "You chose him," he said quietly. "I chose peace," Nora replied. "Peace doesn't exist for people like us." "Then I'll make it exist." He smiled, cold, broken, familiar. "You'll die trying." "Maybe," she said, raising her weapon. "But at least I'll die free." The wind howled, the world paused, and the 3 of them stood locked in a triangle of history, betrayal and love. Then the shot rang out. But it wasn't clear who fired first. The world went white when the shot fired. Then still, utterly still, Nora's breath came in short. Uneven bursts as she stared into the falling snow, waiting for the pain, for the next sound, for anything that meant she was still alive. But the only thing she heard was Lorenzo's voice. "Nora, hey, look at me." His hands were on her shoulders, steady, trembling only slightly. The snow beneath them was streaked with blood, but not hers. She blinked, eyes focusing. Ethan was gone. A trail of red led into the woods, fading quickly in the storm. "He's still alive," she whispered. "Then we'll find him later," Lorenzo said, voice rough. "Right now, we stop you from bleeding out." "I told you, it's not just a graze." She didn't argue this time. Pain clawed its way up her thigh, sharp and real. He lifted her gently, carrying her back toward the cabin, his breath fogging in the freezing air. "You don't have to. You've carried enough people, Nora," he said. "Let someone carry you for once." Inside, the fire still burned, faint, flickering, stubborn. He set her down near it, ripped a strip from his shirt and pressed it to her wound. She hissed through her teeth, gripping the floorboards. "Easy," he murmured. "Almost done. You're surprisingly gentle for a man who shoots people before breakfast. Only the ones who deserve it." "So, everyone?" He smiled, that rare, quiet curve of his lips that didn't reach his eyes. Almost. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm outside howled like something alive, but in the glow of that small fire, the world felt distant, fragile. Lorenzo poured a bit of whiskey into a rag, cleaning her wound carefully. Every touch carried something unspoken. Guilt, gratitude, longing. "You shouldn't have followed me into this life," she said softly. You think I had a choice? You always have a choice. He looked at her, eyes burning. So why didn't you leave when you had yours? She didn't answer, because they both knew. Leaving would have meant erasing something she wasn't ready to let go of. Hours passed. The fire grew low, the night colder. Lorenzo sat near her, his jacket draped around her shoulders. You need rest, he said quietly. And you need a plan. You always think in tactics, he said, even when you're bleeding. It's what keeps me alive. It's what keeps you from living. The words hit harder than she expected. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to live anymore, Lorenzo. Not after everything I've done. Then start now, he said softly. Start here, she met his gaze. There was no command there. No arrogance. Just a man, tired, human, scarred like her. Why do you care so much? She asked. Because somewhere between your orders and my enemies, I stopped seeing you as someone who works for me, and started seeing me as someone I don't want to lose. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker, the fire louder. She didn't pull away when he reached for her hand this time. You break every rule, DeLuca, she murmured. You taught me how. He leaned closer, voice a low rasp. Tell me not to. She couldn't. Instead, she let her head rest against his chest. Heartbeat steady, real. Later, when the world was quiet again, Nora stirred awake to the sound of distant wind. Lorenzo sat by the window, gun resting in his lap, watching the storm. Couldn't sleep? She asked softly. Didn't want to. You think he's still out there? Ethan? He nodded. Men like him don't die easy. But he's bleeding. He'll hide. He'll plan. And then he'll come back. She shifted slightly, pain reminding her she was still healing. Then we need to move before he does. We? You think I'm letting you walk into this alone? He turned toward her, something dangerous and tender in his expression. You can't protect me from everything, Nora. Then let me protect what's left. He rose, crossed the room, and knelt beside her. For a moment, the Mafia boss was gone, replaced by the man who'd just held her through hell. You keep doing that, he said softly. What? Making me forget who I am. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He smiled faintly, but the look in his eyes carried the weight of a promise. Not love yet, but something dangerously close. Outside, the storm began to ease. The snow stopped falling, and in that fragile silence the forest whispered again. Somewhere in the distance, a single raven's cry. Then, a click, a camera lens. Hidden behind a snow-covered ridge, a figure adjusted his scope, capturing the image of Lorenzo and Nora inside the cabin. Ethan's voice murmured into the cold. You can hide, Nora Steele, but every safe house burns eventually. The storm had finally passed, but silence. That was the part that scared her most. Nora stood by the window, wrapped in Lorenzo's coat, watching as the snowflakes melted into the pale light of dawn. The forest stretched endlessly before her, cold, quiet, and deceptively peaceful. Behind her, Lorenzo moved with that same deliberate calm she'd come to recognize, a man who never rushed, even when the world burned. He slid a fresh magazine into his pistol, checked the chamber, and tucked it into his holster. Are you ready? He asked. She didn't turn. No, but I'll go anyway. He smirked faintly. That's my girl. The words slipped out, low and unguarded, and for the first time, it wasn't a command. And it wasn't possession. It was something closer to affection. They left the cabin just after sunrise. The snow crunched under their boots as they walked through the clearing, their breath visible in the cold. A black SUV waited beyond the trees, the one he'd hidden the night before. You ever notice, Nora said quietly, how snow makes everything look clean? Even when it's not? That's the lie it tells, Lorenzo replied. Makes you forget what's buried underneath. And you? She asked. You still believe in that lie? I stopped believing in clean a long time ago. He opened the passenger door for her. But maybe I still believe in starting over. She hesitated, watching his face. The man who once wielded fear like a weapon now looked almost human in the morning light. She climbed in, and as the engine roared to life, the reflection of snow and sky blurred against the tinted glass. A new world waiting just beyond the next turn. Chicago was still 5 hours away, the city where everything had begun, and where it would all end. The road stretched like a memory between them. For a long while neither spoke. The hum of the tires, the faint hiss of the heater, the occasional flicker of radio static, that was their only company. But silence with Lorenzo wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of things unsaid. Finally, Nora broke it. Back there, when you said you didn't want to lose me, you think I didn't mean it? I think you're afraid to. He glanced at her, jaw tightening. You think fear runs me? No, I think you've built your whole life around pretending it doesn't. A pause. Then a soft exhale. You're not wrong. She smiled faintly. That's a first. He looked back at the road, eyes dark, but calm. You're the first person in a long time who talks to me like I'm not a monster. Maybe I just see the parts of you that you keep trying to bury. And maybe, he said quietly, that's what makes you dangerous. Hours passed. The sun sank behind gray. Clouds again as they neared the outskirts of Chicago, the skyline ghosting through the haze like a promise and a warning. Lorenzo pulled the SUV onto a deserted overlook and killed the engine. They sat there for a moment, the city lights flickering in the distance. Familiar, cruel, beautiful. You grew up here, she said. Yeah, he chuckled softly. Funny thing about home, you never realize how much it owns you until you try to leave it. And yet you came back. Because this time, I decide how the story ends. He leaned forward, pulling a folder from the glove compartment. Photos, documents, and floor plans. Ethan's network. The last pieces of the puzzle. This is where he's hiding now, Lorenzo said. Downtown. Old textile warehouse, east side. He's rebuilding fast. If we don't move tonight, he'll move first, she finished. Their eyes met. The air between them shifted. Not just strategy, but trust. So, she said softly, what's the plan? You and I walk in as ghosts. No backup. No trail. We end it clean. You mean we end him? We end what he started? She studied him, the way his hands rested on the table, and the quiet fire in his voice. And after that, he turned toward her, eyes catching hers. Steady, unreadable. After that, I stopped running. From Ethan? From myself. The wind outside picked up, sweeping across the snow-covered ridge. For a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Nora reached across the console and laid her hand on his. Then maybe, she whispered, we stop running together. He didn't pull away, didn't speak. He just turned his hand over, allowing his fingers to brush against hers. A small gesture that conveyed everything words could not. As the first flakes of snow began to fall again, Lorenzo started the engine. The city lights ahead flickered like distant stars. Waiting. Are you ready? He asked. No, she said, a faint smile curving her lips. But I'll go anyway, he smiled back. The same words. Full circle. The SUV rolled forward into the storm, their silhouettes fading against the pale gray horizon. Two souls bound by fire, guilt, and something that might finally, painfully, be love. Night had fallen by the time they reached the city. Chicago glimmered in the distance, silver lights on black water, snow swirling through the streets like restless ghosts. The closer they drove, the quieter it felt. As if the city itself were holding its breath, and deep within that silence was the warehouse, Ethan's base. Nora tightened her gloves, adjusting the holster beneath her coat. Her pulse was steady, but her thoughts weren't. Every turn of the road brought her closer to the man she once trusted, the one who'd betrayed everything they fought for. Beside her, Lorenzo's focus never wavered, one hand on the wheel, the other resting loosely near the gun on his thigh. Calm, controlled, dangerous. The kind of man who made silence feel like a weapon. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do, she replied. You could have walked away when you found out who he was. You didn't. I don't walk away from unfinished business. A small smile touched his lips, then were the same kind of broken. They parked a block away. The warehouse loomed in the distance, a massive windowless structure, half swallowed by fog and snow. Faint light bled from the upper floors. Nora scanned the perimeter through her scope. 3 guards at the entrance. 2 on the roof. Motion sensors by the side gate. You're good, Lorenzo murmured. I was trained by the best, she said, and then, after a pause, until he became the worst. For a heartbeat. The air between them grew heavy again, not with fear, but with shared understanding. Lorenzo reached into his coat and pulled out a small earpiece. Stay on my left. If things go south, you move first. And you, I finish it, she almost argued. But one look into his eyes, dark, unwavering, told her it was pointless. He'd already made peace with what tonight might cost. They slipped through the side gate, cutting power with a single, precise motion. The world went dark. Only the sound of falling snow and distant footsteps filled the air. Nora moved like a shadow, silent, fluid and methodical. Every motion a memory of her old life, every breath a reminder of what she'd lost. Inside, the air smelled of oil and rust. Old machinery lined the walls, covered in frost. The faint hum of generators echoed through the corridor. Lorenzo gestured. Left. She nodded. They moved deeper, and that's when she heard it, the voice. You always were predictable. Steel. Nora froze. The sound came from the upper catwalk. Low and calm, too familiar. She turned. Ethan Ward stood in the shadows, hands resting on the railing, eyes glinting under dim light. Older, colder, but still the same man she'd once followed into battle. Ethan, she whispered. You look good, he said, stepping forward. Better than I expected. I thought DeLuca would have gotten you killed by now. Lorenzo raised his gun slightly. You talk too much. And you hide behind her, Ethan shot back. Typical Mafia coward. Nora stepped between them, weapon steady. Don't. This is between me and him. Lorenzo's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Ethan smirked. You're still protecting people who don't deserve it. I told you once, Nora. Loyalty gets you killed. And I told you, she said, voice sharp. You don't get to decide who deserves saving. His smile faltered. You still don't see it, do you? He's using you, just like I did, just like they all did. Her grip on the gun trembled, just slightly. No, she said quietly. The difference is, he didn't lie to me. Ethan's eyes darkened. Then you're a fool. He drew his weapon, too fast. The sound of gunfire ripped through the warehouse, echoing against metal and stone. Lorenzo pulled her down behind cover, firing back in controlled bursts. Shells hit the floor, the smell of gunpowder filling the air. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, she breathed. Are you sure? I said I'm fine, but she wasn't. Not inside. Every bullet, every echo felt like the past trying to claw its way out. And when she looked up, Ethan was gone. He's not retreating, Lorenzo said grimly. He's hunting. They moved fast, deeper into the maze of corridors, following shadows, following instinct. At the far end of the hall, the faint sound of a door creaking open. Nora lifted her weapon, rounded the corner, and froze. A red laser dot slid across her chest. Ethan's voice came from the darkness, soft and steady. You should have stayed dead, soldier. Before she could react, Lorenzo stepped in front of her. The shot went off, and blood sprayed across the snow-dusted floor. Lorenzo, he staggered, gun still raised, eyes burning through the pain. Get him. Finish it? No, she shouted, grabbing him as he fell. The warehouse fell silent again, just the sound of her heartbeat pounding against the cold metal walls. And somewhere in that silence, Ethan disappeared. Nora pressed her hand against Lorenzo's wound, tears freezing on her lashes. Stay with me, please. But all he did was look at her, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Told you, you'd be the one to break the rule. She shook her head. Don't talk. You're not. I fell in love with my bodyguard, he whispered, his voice barely there. Guess that makes us both fools. His eyes closed, and for the first time in years, Nora Steele felt fear. Real unstoppable fear. Snow was falling again when she dragged him out of the warehouse. The night swallowed their footsteps. The streetlights blurred through the storm, flickering across his pale face. Lorenzo's blood painted the snow red, bright, shocking, and too alive to be ignored. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Don't you dare die on me, Nora whispered, breath trembling. Not you. He didn't answer. His eyes fluttered open for a second, then closed again. The SUV waited in the alley, engine still warm from the run. She pushed him inside, pressing down hard on the wound. Her fingers were slick with his blood, the smell of iron filling the air. Stay with me, Lorenzo. Stay with me. He let out a faint groan, half pain, half protest. You're bossy. Even now, she almost laughed through the tears. Good. That means you can still talk. But the light in his eyes was fading. Every second felt like sand slipping through her fingers. The drive was a blur, headlights cutting through the snow, the city flashing by in broken fragments. She knew she couldn't take him to a hospital. Not with his name, not with the target on their backs. There was only one place left. One person she still trusted, barely. Mara, former field medic, former friend, now living off the grid in an abandoned clinic on the south side. Nora's heart pounded as she turned the corner, tires screeching across ice. She hit the brakes, jumped out, and ran to the steel door. Mara, open up! For a moment, silence. Then the door cracked open, a flashlight beam blinding her. Nora, a voice rasped. What the hell? He's hit. I need your help. Now. Mara took one look at the man slumped in the passenger seat and swore under her breath. You brought DeLuca here? Jesus, Nora, please, don't ask questions. Just save him. Something in her voice, desperation, raw and real, stopped Mara cold. She nodded once. Inside, quickly. The clinic was dim, the smell of antiseptic long gone. Mara cleared a table, grabbed gauze, and went to work. Nora held Lorenzo's hand, refusing to move even as Mara cut away the fabric and pressed against the wound. His blood seeped through every layer, warm and stubborn. The bullet missed the heart, Mara muttered, but it's deep. He's lucky you got him here this fast. He's not lucky, Nora whispered. He's mine. Mara glanced at her, surprise flickering across her face. But she didn't say anything, just kept working. Minutes felt like hours. Nora's body was shaking from adrenaline and cold, but her mind stayed locked on one thought: don't lose him. When it was finally over, Lorenzo lay unconscious, pale, bandaged, breathing shallow but steady. He needs rest, Mara said. No movement for at least a few days. We don't have a few days. Then pray he makes it through the night. The clinic fell quiet again. Nora sat by his bedside, the storm raging outside the cracked window. Every gust of wind sounded like a ghost whispering her name. She reached for his hand, warm still, barely, and held it against her chest. You're not dying here. Not after everything. Her voice broke. The soldier in her wanted to stay strong, but the woman, the one she tried so hard to bury, was breaking open. I told myself I wouldn't feel anything, she whispered, that you were just another assignment, another paycheck. But you... She paused, swallowing the ache in her throat. You got under my skin, Lorenzo DeLuca. You made me forget who I was supposed to be. A faint sound, a breath, Or maybe a word escaped his lips. Then don't forget, he murmured weakly, eyes still closed. Her breath caught. You're awake? Halfway, he whispered. He's still out there. Ethan, I know, but right now, you're staying alive. That's an order. You're giving me orders now? Someone has to. He tried to smile, but pain twisted it away. You sound like a soldier again. Maybe I still am, she said softly. But this time, I'm fighting for something worth bleeding for. He drifted back into unconsciousness, and she leaned forward, brushing her fingers lightly through his hair. Her voice fell to a whisper. You broke the rule first, Lorenzo. I just followed. Outside, the snow kept falling, endless, cold, indifferent, but inside that broken-down clinic, two hearts refused to stop fighting. Still alive, still burning. And somewhere in the dark, Ethan Ward watched from across the street. A cigarette glowed between his fingers as he spoke into his radio. She's protecting him, he said quietly. Just like I thought. He dropped the cigarette into the snow and turned away. Then it's time to remind her who she really is. Morning came gray and hollow, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. Nora hadn't slept. She sat by Lorenzo's bedside, still in the same clothes, eyes red from exhaustion but alert, every breath of his. Every twitch, every sigh memorized like prayer. Outside, the storm had passed, but inside her, the war had only just begun. Mara came in quietly, setting a tray down beside her. You need to eat. I'm fine, Nora said, eyes never leaving Lorenzo. Fine? Mara scoffed. You've been awake 30 hours straight. He almost died. So did you, Mara shot back. But you're acting like you don't care if you do again. Nora didn't answer, because she didn't know how to explain it, that the line between duty and desire had blurred so completely she couldn't see it anymore. Mara sighed, softer this time. Whoever he is. He's gotten under your skin. Nora's jaw tightened. He's not whoever. She stopped herself, voice faltering. He's what? Mine to protect. Mara gave a knowing smile. That's not the word you wanted to use. Before Nora could reply, a faint beep broke the silence. Her comms unit. A signal she hadn't heard since she left the agency. Her stomach dropped. The screen flickered. Static. Then a voice. Still watching over lost causes, Steele? Her breath hitched. Ethan. She stood slowly, scanning the corners of the room as if his voice might crawl out of the walls. What do you want? You. Always you. A pause. Then his tone shifted. Cold. Clinical. Funny how you trade one uniform for another. Soldier, bodyguard, lover. Same mission. Serve, protect, obey. Her hands clenched. You don't know anything about me anymore. I know you better than anyone, Ethan said. You can't save him, Nora. He's already dead, whether by my hand or his own mistakes. You know it. You're wrong. Am I? Tell me. What happens when DeLuca wakes up and realizes you're the only person who can expose him? That you've seen too much? He's not like you. No, Ethan said softly. He's worse, because he makes you believe he isn't. The line cut. For a moment, the room was so quiet she could hear her pulse in her ears. Later, when Mara stepped out for supplies, Nora stood by the window, staring out at the city. Snow had melted into slush. The streets glistened like glass under the pale winter sun. Her reflection stared back. The soldier, the woman, the protector, but her eyes, they looked like a stranger's. Ethan's words echoed in her head. You serve, protect, and obey. Same mission, same lie. She turned away from the glass and looked at Lorenzo. He was still unconscious, pale, fragile, and too human for the man who once commanded fear with a whisper. She moved closer, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, and whispered, You're not the monster they say you are. Her voice cracked, barely holding together. You can't be. Hours passed. She cleaned his wound again, changed the dressing, and kept watch like it was the only thing tethering her to sanity. At some point, his breathing changed, deeper, steadier. Then his eyes opened. Where are we? He rasped. Safe, she said softly. Safe isn't real, he murmured. She smiled faintly. Then pretend with me. He tried to sit up. Pain twisted across his face. Don't move, she said, pressing a hand to his chest. He looked up at her, eyes dark, searching. You've been crying. No, you have, he said, voice quiet. Who hurt you? She hesitated. Then quietly, someone who used to be my friend. Ethan? Her eyes flicked to his. How do you talk in your sleep, he said, and I've been listening. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lorenzo reached out weakly, fingers brushing hers. He's trying to break you. Nora, don't let him. He already did, she whispered. He shook his head slowly. No, he just made you forget who you are. And who's that? Someone who makes even a man like me believe in something good again. Her breath caught. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I'll believe you. He smiled faintly, and for the first time in days, warmth flickered between them. Small, real, dangerous, but that peace didn't last. Down the hall, the lights flickered. A shadow passed across the frosted window. Then, the unmistakable sound of boots crunching in snow. Lorenzo's hand tensed in hers. He found us. She grabbed her weapon, eyes hardening. Then he just made the last mistake of his life. Outside, the wind began to howl again. Snow fell heavier, covering the tracks of whoever had come for them. Inside, Nora Steele, the soldier, the bodyguard, the woman who swore never to love, chambered around and took her position. This time, it wasn't about duty, it was about him, and she would kill to protect the man who'd taught her how to feel again. The first shot shattered the glass. Nora didn't flinch. She dropped instantly, pulling Lorenzo down with her as shards rained across the floor. The sound was deafening in the silence that followed, the kind of silence that only comes before a war. "They're here," she whispered. Lorenzo's breathing was still shallow, every movement costing him strength, but his hand reached for the pistol at his side anyway. "You need to go," he rasped. "I'm not leaving you. Nora, listen. No." Her voice was sharp and commanding. "I've left too many people behind. You're not going to be one of them." He looked at her, saw that steel in her eyes, the kind that didn't come from training but from loss. He nodded once, "Then we fight." Snow blew through the broken window, coating the clinic floor in white dust. Footsteps crunched outside, slow, deliberate, closing in. Nora checked her weapon, slid the magazine in, and chambered around. The sound echoed like a promise. "3 outside," she muttered. "1 rooftop sniper, high angle. Classic setup. He's not sending amateurs," Lorenzo said. "No," she replied, eyes narrowing. "He's sending a message." "What kind?" "That he knows me." The door creaked, then burst open. Nora fired first. 2 shots, clean and precise. The first man dropped instantly. The second dove for cover behind a cabinet, returning fire. Bullets tore through the walls. Mara screamed from the back room, ducking low. "You brought a war into my clinic. You want to live?" Nora shouted back. "Then stay down." She moved fast, low, tactical, sweeping the hallway. Every instinct alive, every muscle remembering who she once was. Lorenzo tried to stand, bracing against the wall. Blood stained his bandages again. "Stay down," Nora barked. "I'm not watching you fight alone," he growled. "You can barely breathe. Then I'll die on my feet." For a second, their eyes met, a silent argument burning between them. Then she turned away, firing again. As 2 more men crashed through the side door, the fight was chaos, close quarters, brutal. Nora moved like smoke, precise and merciless. A knife flashed. She caught the man's wrist, twisted, and drove her elbow into his jaw. He hit the floor hard. Gunfire echoed again. From outside this time, a window shattered near Lorenzo's head. He ducked, scanning the rooftops. Through the falling snow, he saw it, a glint of glass. The sniper. He aimed his pistol. Hand trembling from blood loss, the shot rang out, wide. Nora turned, hearing it. "Lorenzo," he fired again. This time, the bullet hit metal. The sniper's scope cracked. The shooter cursed and vanished behind cover. Nora exhaled, just long enough for a third man to rush her from behind. They slammed into a table, both crashing hard to the ground. The man pinned her down, snarling. "He said to bring you in alive." "Then he should have sent someone better," she hissed, and headbutted him, hard. He went limp. She rolled free, gasping, the world spinning for a second. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, from fury. Ethan's men weren't here to kill her. They were here to take her. She stumbled back into the main room, scanning for Lorenzo. He was slumped against the wall, gun still in hand, breathing heavily. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Ask me after we're both not dead." Despite the chaos, she smiled. Small, raw, real. "You sound almost human when you're bleeding, and you sound like a woman who's enjoying this. Maybe I am, for a heartbeat." The world stilled, then a sudden crack shattered the moment. A single, perfect sniper shot tore through the far window and hit Lorenzo square in the shoulder. He dropped the gun, staggering. "No!" Nora screamed. She lunged toward him, pulling him down just as another bullet shattered the wall above them. Blood bloomed across his shirt, bright against the white snow drifting through the window. "Stay with me," she said, pressing her hand to the wound. "You have to run," he groaned. "He wants you. Then he's going to have to come and get me." She grabbed a smoke grenade from her belt, her last one, and yanked the pin. "Close your eyes." The explosion filled the clinic with gray smoke, swallowing everything in haze and chaos. Through the fog, she dragged Lorenzo toward the back door, her lungs burning, her heart hammering. The last thing she saw through the smoke was a figure on the rooftop across the street, lowering his rifle. Ethan, watching her. She met his gaze through the drifting haze of snow and ash. He raised 2 fingers, like a salute, and disappeared into the night. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The snow had turned crimson in patches. Nora collapsed beside the SUV, cradling Lorenzo's face in her hands. His eyes fluttered open, faint but still there. "Are you still with me?" "Barely," he whispered. "But I'm not going anywhere," she laughed, tears streaking down her face. Good, because I'm not done being mad at you yet, he smiled weakly. You're beautiful when you're mad. She pressed her forehead to his. Then you're going to see it a lot. The wind howled through the streets, snow swirling around them like ghosts. And in that moment, blood, smoke, love, and fury. Nora Steele made a silent vow. Ethan Ward had started this war, but she would be the one to end it. Chicago slept under a white sky that night, silent, heavy, suffocating. The city's noise was buried beneath the weight of winter, and somewhere in its frozen heart, Nora Steele was hunting. Her breath came in short bursts, visible in the cold air. Her gloved hands gripped the pistol tight. She moved like a ghost between the alleyways, quick, deliberate, and untraceable. Every step took her closer to the man who had shattered everything. Ethan Ward, she whispered to herself. You wanted me to remember you. I do. Lorenzo lay inside a safe house on the outskirts of the city, half conscious, half alive. The fire in the old brick fireplace threw long shadows across his face. Mara worked over him again, blood staining her hands. He shouldn't have moved, she muttered. He's losing too much. He won't stop, Nico said quietly from the corner, loading his weapon. He never does. Then he'll die trying. Lorenzo stirred, his voice low but sharp. Get me the phone. Mara froze. You're in no condition. Get it! Nico obeyed. He handed Lorenzo the burner, a cheap black device, cold to the touch. Lorenzo typed something slowly, his blood smearing the screen. When he was done, he pressed send, a message delivered to one person only. Warehouse 47, midnight. Don't go alone. Nora stood across from that warehouse now, a decaying steel skeleton buried under snow. Her breath clouded the air. Her pulse pounded in her throat. The message had found her 15 minutes ago. She knew what it meant. Danger, maybe a trap. But she also knew Lorenzo had sent it for a reason. You're really going through with this, she muttered. She checked her sidearm, holstered it, and stepped into the darkness. Inside, the air was colder, like death had lived here once and never left. The smell of oil and rust filled her lungs. Snowflakes drifted in through broken skylights, landing softly on the concrete floor. Then, a voice. You never did like following orders. Ethan Ward stepped out of the shadows, slow and confident, black coat, gloves, the same blue-gray eyes that had once trained beside hers. It's been a long time. Nora. Not long enough. He smiled, a cruel, knowing curve of his lips. You could have had everything. Money, safety, respect. But you chose him. I chose myself, she snapped. And I stopped being scared of you. He tilted his head. You should be. You know what happens to people who betray me. You trained me. You should remember how that ends. She fired first, one clean shot. Ethan ducked, the bullet grazing his shoulder. He returned fire, forcing her behind a pillar. The gunfire echoed through the warehouse like thunder. Sparks flew where bullets met metal. It was chaos, but controlled. Two predators circling each other. Both too proud to miss. Still quick, he called out. Still stubborn. Still better than you. She moved along the shadows, counting every sound, every echo. He was closer now, 10 meters, maybe less. You think he loves you, Nora? Ethan's voice was calm, almost gentle. You think the Mafia boss sees you as anything more than a weapon? I don't care what he sees. Liar. She fired again. This time, her bullet tore through his coat. He grunted, stumbled, then laughed softly. There's the steel I remember. Cold, ruthless, empty. She stepped from behind cover, gun trained on him. You don't know me anymore. I made you. No. Her voice broke, not from weakness, but truth. You destroyed me. I rebuilt myself. They stood there, snow drifting between them. Guns aimed, memories bleeding through the silence. For a moment, the world was just them, two ghosts bound by the same past. Then Ethan lowered his weapon slightly. He's going to die. Nora. DeLuca doesn't survive men like me. You can't protect him forever. Maybe not. She took a slow step forward, but I can make sure you don't touch him again. She fired once more. The bullet hit its mark. Ethan fell to his knees, breath leaving him in a single stunned gasp. You? Always, he whispered, but the words froze before they finished. He collapsed into the snow, his blood blooming across the white floor. Nora lowered her gun, chest heaving, eyes burning. For a long moment, she just stood there, surrounded by silence, smoke, and snow. Her hand trembled. She had won, and yet her heart felt heavier than ever. She holstered her weapon and turned toward the exit, but stopped. A shadow moved in the far corner. A soft voice echoed through the dark. You shouldn't have come alone, Nora. Spun, gun raised, just in time to see a red laser dot appear on her chest. Her breath caught. Too late. The shot rang out, loud, final. Perfect. The impact threw her back against the pillar. Pain bloomed like fire through her ribs. She fell to her knees, gasping, her vision blurring as snow drifted down through the broken roof. Her gun clattered away across the floor. Nora! A distant voice shouted. Lorenzo's. She blinked, dazed. vision fading. Lorenzo's silhouette appeared through the snow and smoke, running toward her. But before she could speak, everything went white, and the last thing she heard was his voice, breaking, desperate, alive. "Stay with me. Please, Nora. Stay with me." The world was white, silent, weightless. Snow drifted across her lashes as Nora Steele fought to open her eyes. Her chest burned, not from the cold, but from the bullet that had torn through her ribs. She tried to move. Pain answered. The warehouse ceiling loomed above her, cracked and distant, like the sky itself was shattering. Somewhere far away, boots pounded against the concrete. "Nora!" Lorenzo's voice cut through the haze, raw, frantic. He stumbled through the snow and smoke, one arm still bound in blood-soaked bandages, the other holding his pistol like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Nora! Talk to me!" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. All she could do was reach, faintly, weakly, toward the sound of him. He dropped beside her, gathering her up against him. Her blood soaked into his coat instantly. "No, no, no. Stay with me," he whispered, voice breaking. "You hear me? You don't get to die like this." Her eyes fluttered open. "You shouldn't have come. You think I'd let you do this alone? You were supposed to stay alive." He laughed, bitter, soft. "You broke that rule first, remember?" Tears froze against her skin as the cold bit deeper. She tried to smile, but her breath trembled. "He's dead?" she asked. "Yeah," Lorenzo said quietly. "You got him." Her head fell against his shoulder, relief washing through her in a fragile exhale. But he felt it, the weight of her fading pulse beneath his fingers. "Hey," he said, shaking her lightly. "Look at me." Her gaze met his, tired, glassy, beautiful. "You can't lose me twice," he whispered. "Not after everything. Then don't let go." The sound of engines roared outside, black SUVs closing in. Nico's voice came over the radio. "Boss, we've got company. You need to move now." Lorenzo pressed the radio to his mouth, fury sharpening his tone. "Get the car to the north exit. 5 minutes." He turned back to Nora, jaw tight. "We're leaving." "Hold on." He lifted her, every motion sending pain through both of them. Her breath hitched as the wound reopened, blood streaking down his arm. "You're bleeding again," she murmured. "So are you," he said. "Let's call it even." Snow hammered against the metal doors as they burst into the street. The city stretched before them, empty, frozen, ghost-like. Nico ran ahead, the door of the black SUV open. "Engine running. Boss, you drive," Lorenzo barked, sliding Nora into the back seat, cradling her head against his chest. As the car sped off, gunfire erupted behind them, flashes of light chasing through the snow. Bullets pinged against the steel. Nico swerved, tires cutting deep into the white road. Nora gasped, clutching Lorenzo's coat. "If we die, promise me something. Don't talk like that. Promise me." Her voice cracked, weak but sure. "You'll walk away from this life. No more blood. No more walls." He didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the storm outside. Then, finally, "Only if you walk away with me." Her laugh was faint, broken. "Beautiful, you always were bad at following rules. And you were always bad at staying safe." They reached the outskirts. An abandoned cabin near the frozen lake. Nico helped drag her inside and laid her on the couch. The firelight painted her face gold and shadow. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Lorenzo tore through the medbag, hands trembling as he worked to stop the bleeding. Mara's voice on the radio tried to guide him, but he barely heard her. "Don't close your eyes," he said, pressing against the wound. "Stay with me." "Nora, I swear I'll fix this. You can't fix everything." "Lorenzo, watch me." Her fingers found his, cold, trembling. "You know what hurts the most?" she whispered. "What?" "That I spent years protecting people who never cared if I lived or died. And then I met you. And now? Now I care too much." A single tear slid down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. "Then we're both guilty," he said softly. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. "You told me once you don't believe in happy endings." "I don't," she murmured. "But I believe in you." Outside, the wind howled like a requiem. Inside, firelight flickered across blood and snow. Her eyes fluttered shut. Lorenzo froze, counting the seconds between her breaths. "Nora," he whispered. "Hey, don't you dare." "Nothing." He pressed his palm to her cheek. Cold, too still. Something inside him shattered. Quiet. Final, beyond repair. "No." He buried his face against her shoulder. "Please, not you." Then faint. So faint he almost missed it. A breath. Her fingers twitched. Her pulse flickered. "Lorenzo?" He looked up instantly. Her eyes were half open. She was alive. Barely. He exhaled a laugh that sounded like a sob. "You scared the hell out of me. Get used to it," she whispered. "I'm not done saving you yet." He laughed, a raw, broken sound that melted into silence as he held her close. Outside, the storm began to ease. The first rays of morning broke across the snow, but behind that fragile calm, something darker stirred, because Ethan Ward might be dead, but the war he started was not. Morning broke slow over Chicago. the kind of gray dawn that didn't bring peace, only questions. The cabin sat quiet against the frozen lake, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Inside, Nora Steele slept, or tried to. Her chest rose in shallow breaths, a bandage stark white against her skin. Lorenzo sat beside her, unshaven and silent, watching the fire burn down to embers. He hadn't slept in 2 nights. He didn't need to, not when every flicker of her pulse meant more than his own heartbeat. He traced the edge of the bandage on her shoulder, whispering, more to himself than to her, "You shouldn't have followed me into this world." Her voice came faint, barely a whisper. "You didn't give me much choice." He froze, then looked up. Her eyes were open, tired. "Yes, but alive. You don't quit easily, do you?" he said softly. "I was trained not to." She tried to sit up, winced, and he steadied her with a gentle hand. "You should rest, and you should stop blaming yourself. You got shot because of me." "No," she said. "I got shot because I loved you." That silenced him. The words hung between them, raw, unguarded, heavy as snowfall. "Say something," she whispered. He looked at her, eyes burning with something more than pain. "You think I don't love you, Nora? I think you don't know how." He laughed once, quiet and brokenly. "You might be right." Hours passed. Mara arrived with medical supplies, muttering about madness and miracles. Nico checked the perimeter, silent and grim. By evening, Nora was strong enough to stand. She walked slowly to the window, watching the snow fall across the lake. Endless white, endless silence. "He's gone," she said. "Ethan's gone. But it doesn't feel over." Lorenzo joined her, standing close enough to feel her warmth, because it isn't, he said. "You think someone else is coming? In our world, there's always someone else." She turned to him, eyes sharp again, the soldier resurfacing. "Then let me finish this with you. You've done enough." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't push me out because you're scared to lose me again." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took her hand, rough against gentle, and placed something in her palm. A small silver key, cold, heavy, meaningful. "What's this?" she asked. "The vault in Naples. My father's. Everything the DeLuca name ever built is hidden there. Why are you giving it to me?" "Because if I don't make it back," he said quietly, "you're the only one I trust to destroy it." She stared at him. "You really think I'd let you die? You don't get to decide that anymore, Nora." Night fell again. The fire burned lower. Lorenzo sat at the table, tracing maps, routes, names, and safe houses. Nora approached quietly, her footsteps soft against the wooden floor. "You're leaving," she said. "Someone has to clean up what he started. Then I'm coming with you." He looked up, that familiar mix of anger and tenderness in his eyes. "You're barely standing. Then I'll fight on my knees if I have to." For a moment, they just looked at each other, no words, just the truth neither could escape. Then he reached out, pulling her close, his voice rough. "You make it impossible to let go." "Good," she whispered, "because I'm not planning to." Their lips met, slow, trembling, desperate. It wasn't victory. It was survival, the first real warmth either had felt in years. Outside, the snow thickened. A black car approached through the storm. Silent, unmarked. Inside the cabin, the two of them didn't hear it at first. They were too lost in each other, in the fragile illusion of peace. But then, headlights cut through the window, engines idled, doors opened. Nico shouted from outside, "Boss! You need to see this." Lorenzo pulled away, eyes narrowing. Nora reached instinctively for her gun. They stepped out into the snow together. 4 men stood near the car, dressed in black coats, faces shadowed. One of them stepped forward, holding a sealed envelope. "From whom?" Lorenzo demanded. The man smiled faintly. "From the one who trained her." Nora froze. Her stomach turned to ice. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Ethan's dead," Lorenzo said. The messenger dropped the envelope at their feet. "Then tell me why his signature's still fresh." The men turned and left, their taillights disappearing into the storm. Lorenzo bent down and picked up the envelope. It was sealed with black wax, an insignia neither of them had seen before. Nora reached out with shaking hands. "Open it." He tore it slowly. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. It showed a man standing in the snow, face turned away, but unmistakable. Ethan Ward, alive, and standing outside their cabin, hours before dawn. Nora's breath caught. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. The wind howled through the trees, scattering snow like ash. "He's watching us," she whispered. "Then let him," Lorenzo said coldly, "because next time, we end this." The camera pans up. The snow is falling harder now, their silhouettes framed against firelight and storm. 2 figures standing side by side, facing the darkness. Snow still covered the cabin by the frozen lake, but something had changed in the air. The silence wasn't the kind that came before violence anymore. It felt softer, almost forgiving. Nora sat by the window wrapped in a blanket, staring at the woods beyond the frost-covered glass. The photograph lay on the table behind her, Ethan's face blurred by shadows and snow. She hadn't slept all night. Part of her wanted to believe it was fake. Another part already knew it wasn't. Lorenzo moved quietly through the room, his coat still dusted with snow from outside. He didn't say anything at first. He poured coffee into 2 cups, the steam rising like a small ghost between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, tired, but steady. "You keep staring out there like he's about to walk through those trees." She smiled faintly. "If he is, I'll be ready." He handed her the cup and sat across from her. "You don't have to keep fighting ghosts, Nora." She met his eyes. "He's alive. That means it's not over." He leaned back, watching her. "Maybe it is. Maybe we let it be." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for the truth. Lorenzo DeLuca, the man who once ruled half of Chicago, now sat across from her like a man who was simply tired of blood. And maybe, just maybe, she was too. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow. She spoke quietly. "You think we could really walk away? I've killed for less," he said with a bitter smile. "But this is something worth living for." For the first time in years, she felt something inside her shift. Not fear, not duty, just the quiet ache of wanting peace. She reached across the table, her hand resting over his. "Then let's try." He didn't answer right away. He just turned his hand over and laced his fingers with hers. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked softly in the corner, the world outside fading into a blur of white. When she finally broke the silence, her voice trembled. "I thought love would make me weak, but it didn't. It just made me want to survive." He smiled faintly. "You did more than survive. You saved me." She shook her head. "We saved each other." He stood and walked to the small desk near the fire. There, beneath a pile of papers, lay a single envelope, sealed, unmarked. He tossed it into the flames. The paper curled and blackened instantly. "What was that?" she asked. "Everything I still owed this life." The firelight reflected in her eyes as she watched it burn. "Then that's it," she whispered. He nodded. "That's it." They packed what little they had over the next few hours. No weapons this time, no maps, no plans. Just clothes, documents, and the key Lorenzo had once given her. By the time the sun began to dip behind the trees, the SUV was loaded. Before leaving, Nora stepped outside one last time, boots crunching in the snow. She turned back toward the cabin, the place that had been both a battlefield and a sanctuary. The wind bit at her cheeks, but she didn't mind. She whispered under her breath, "We're done running." Lorenzo joined her, his hand slipping into hers. "Where to?" "Anywhere that isn't here." He smiled, a real one this time. "Then anywhere sounds perfect." They drove through the forest road as night settled, headlights cutting through the snow. For the first time, there was no chase behind them. No shadows, no gunfire, no ghosts. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of her breathing beside him. After a long silence, she turned toward him. "You really think people like us get happy endings?" He didn't take his eyes off the road. "No," he said softly, "but maybe we get another chance. And that's close enough." Her head leaned against his shoulder, her eyes finally closing. The city lights were long behind them now, swallowed by the white horizon. Somewhere far ahead, there would be new roads, new names, and a life that didn't demand blood for loyalty. As the car disappeared into the snowy distance, the fire in the cabin burned down to ashes. The photograph of Ethan Ward still lay on the table, half buried under a drift of snow that had slipped through the cracked window. The wind caught its edge and turned it face down, and for the first time in a long time, the world let them go. The snow had begun to melt in the small town 3 hours north of Chicago, the first hints of spring softening the air. Nora watched the icicles dripping outside the window of their rented cabin, smaller, quieter than the one they'd left behind. It didn't look like much from the outside, just wood and silence, but inside, it felt like peace. For the first time in years, mornings weren't about gunmetal and shadows. She woke to the smell of coffee, to Lorenzo's quiet hum as he tried to fix the old radio that never quite worked. There were no guards, no codes, no orders. Just him, just her, just the echo of what they'd survived. He caught her watching him that morning and smiled. "You keep looking at me like I might disappear." She smiled back faintly. "Maybe I still can't believe you're here." He set the radio down, crossed the room, and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "Then believe it. We made it out." The words should have felt final, but Nora knew peace wasn't that simple. Sometimes the quiet could be louder than war. There were nights when Lorenzo would wake drenched in sweat, the ghosts of the past clawing their way into his sleep. And there were mornings she'd find herself reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. They were both learning what it meant to live without armor. Days passed slower now. Lorenzo had found work repairing old cars in a nearby garage. He liked it. The rhythm, the grease, the simplicity of fixing something broken. Nora volunteered at a local animal shelter, her quiet strength making even the most frightened creatures trust her. Neither of them said it out loud, but both were trying to learn how to be normal. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the snow-tipped trees, Nora sat outside on the porch steps. The world smelled like pine and smoke. Lorenzo came out with 2 mugs of tea and sat beside her. "You ever think about going back?" he asked softly. She took a long breath. Sometimes. Then I remember what it cost us. He nodded, looking out at the horizon. I keep wondering if it'll ever stop following us. Maybe it doesn't have to, she said. Maybe we just stop looking over our shoulders. He smiled, not the sharp, guarded smile of a man used to command, but something warmer, freer. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's worth trying. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faint sound of a train far in the distance. For a moment, the world felt suspended, as if time had finally stopped running after them. Then Lorenzo spoke again, his voice quiet. You know what I remember most about that night in Chicago? She turned toward him. Which one? The one where you stood between me and a bullet, he said. You didn't even flinch. You just moved. She smiled faintly. I didn't have time to think. He looked at her, something soft flickering in his eyes. You should have let me take that shot. She shook her head. Then we wouldn't be here. Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of things unspoken. Gratitude, love, the weight of all they'd survived. He reached for her hand, tracing the faint scar on her palm, the same one that had once been a mark of violence. Now, it was something else entirely. I used to think love was a weakness, he said quietly. But now I think it's the only thing that ever made me strong. She leaned against his shoulder. Guess we both broke that rule. He laughed softly. Yeah, and I'd do it again. The snow began to fall lightly once more, not the stormy kind that erased everything, but soft, like forgiveness. The sky was pale blue fading into silver, and the cabin windows glowed with the warmth of the fire inside. For the first time, Nora realized she wasn't waiting for the next battle. There was no plan, no escape route, no fear of tomorrow. There was only this moment, quiet, imperfect, and real. She whispered almost to herself, "We made it out alive." Lorenzo turned his head slightly toward her. "No," he said softly. "We did more than that. We found something worth living for." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Then maybe it's time we stopped surviving and started living." The wind stirred the trees. Somewhere far away, the last traces of their old life disappeared beneath the snow. And in that quiet little cabin, surrounded by everything they'd lost and everything they'd found, Nora Steele finally let herself believe in peace. The last of the snow had melted by the time spring came to the little town. The lake that once froze solid was now awake again, water rippling under sunlight, soft wind carrying the smell of new beginnings. Nora stood at the edge of the dock, hands in her pockets, watching the reflection of the sky shimmer across the surface. It felt unreal, this quiet. Unreal that after everything she could just stand still. Behind her, Lorenzo's footsteps crunched softly on the wooden boards. "You keep coming out here every morning," he said, his voice warm with amusement. "Planning to run away, Steele?" She turned, smiling faintly. "Not this time." He moved closer, sliding an arm around her waist as they looked out at the water together. The sunlight hit his face just right. No more darkness in his eyes, no more tension in his jaw. For once, Lorenzo DeLuca didn't look like a man who had survived a war. He looked like a man who had chosen peace. "I got an offer," he said quietly. "A small garage. Owner's retiring. Says I can take over if I want." She looked up at him, eyes soft. "You thinking of saying yes?" He shrugged. "Depends. You sticking around?" She smiled. "Depends. You planning on paying me this time?" He laughed, and the sound broke something open inside her. That rare kind of laughter that felt like healing. "Tell you what," he said, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "I'll pay you in quiet mornings and long nights. Deal?" "Deal." For a long moment they stood there, saying nothing. Just the sound of the water, the wind, the world moving forward. Every scar, every loss, every sleepless night, it had all led to this. To a life not of riches or power, but peace. He kissed her forehead, whispering against her skin, "You saved me, you know." She smiled faintly. "We saved each other." Later that evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and crimson. The world looked softer in that light, as if it was giving them permission to start over. Lorenzo reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small box and placed it gently in her hand. Nora froze. Her heart stumbled. "Before you say anything," he said quietly, "I know we're not the fairy tale type. But this," he gestured between them, "feels like the closest thing to home I've ever had. And I don't want to spend another day without knowing it's real." Her fingers trembled as she opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. No diamonds, no grandeur, just honest, steady light. She looked up at him, eyes wet. "You sure about this?" "I was never sure about anything," he said. "Until you." The tears came before she could stop them. And when she leaned forward, kissing him with the kind of love that had survived bullets and betrayal and time itself, the world seemed to go quiet again. The kind of quiet that means safety. The kind that means home. A soft laugh escaped her lips against his. "Guess we really broke the one rule." He smiled. "And look how that turned out." They stayed there long after the sun disappeared, holding on to each other while the stars began to spill across the sky. Somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of a passing train hummed, not as a reminder of the past, but as a promise of all that was ahead. Nora rested her head on his shoulder. What now? Lorenzo looked up at the night, his voice calm and certain. Now, we live. And as the camera would fade, if this were a film, it would linger on them. Two souls who had walked through hell and somehow found heaven in each other's arms. Because sometimes, the most dangerous love stories don't end in tragedy. They end in peace. If you felt their story, hit subscribe. Because some loves are worth fighting for, and some worth living for.